For subthematic freedom of the media. The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right to freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right to freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and
the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right to freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right to freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers, and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement.
Human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers, and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right of freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers, and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was...
We have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right of freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers, and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right of freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers, and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right of freedom for the media, and free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right to freedom for the media, and the free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
The summit is actually an annual event which we organize to host civil society organizations, duty bearers and private sector community to look at a number of issues that affect the operating environment for civil society organizations.
The Civic Freedoms Forum was founded out of a need to consolidate and coordinate civic space protection interventions. So we thought it was better for us as a country, but more so as civil society, to consolidate those efforts, to synergize those efforts.
We reflect on this and give opinions that is going to inform government improvement of our democratic spaces.
We also bring on board other civic actors, including other CSOs and government players. And here we have been looking at the right to assembly, right to associate, right to freedom for the media, and the free speech for citizens.
We have continued to witness a cocktail of hit and misses, including a combination of legal and practical constraints that have contradicted the fundamental human rights.
We've also been able to contribute to ongoing discussions around, gaps in terms of the legal frameworks that are there. With the most recent one, I think the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act, to be able to give very insightful feedback on where the gaps are, so that then I think those legal frameworks can be strengthened.
In the 2022 annual summit, we actually had very serious commitments from the NGOs Coordination Board, Kenya Law Reform Commission, and the National Commission on the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights.
We've seen introduction of very punitive laws that most of them have very little thought about the current ecosystem that we operate with and we are operating in.
It is very important that civil society of like-minded come together to reflect on the freedoms that citizens are supposed to enjoy.
Take us through that session. Karibu sana. Yeah, so apologies, I've just been reminded that tunaanza aje bila maombi. Ndio hiyo. So probably we get another volunteer hapa, volunteer kama wajana. Spirit filled. Pale, yes. So let's have our comrade lead us in the opening prayers. Karibu.
Hamjambo wote. Tuamini na tuombe. Mwenyezi Mungu muumba mbingu na ardhi, tunakushukuru kwa sababu ya siku hii ya leo. Tunakushukuru kwa uzima wetu. Wale ambao wako njiani kuja, tunaombea safari njema. Tunakushukuru kwa kuwa nasi hapa hadi wa sasa. Tunajikabidhi mkononi mwako kwa kwamba wacha mapenzi yako yatimie. Ninaomba hii nikiamini kwa jina lako kuu. Amen.
Thank you so much. Just another administrative announcement. For those that are checking out today, I've been reminded that you can do so latest 10 a.m. So you can, at your own free time before 10 a.m., just go check out with the reception. They can keep your bag at reception. They don't have to carry it here. So. Thank you. They're taking the microphones. Yeah, so again today, as of course, as we prepare, just remember that throughout the session, go to your Twitter, hashtag is the same. It is hashtag CSP3. So go to your Twitter and CSP. Oh, yes, please. Okay. So we'll project that there. Continue tweeting as we proceed. Take photos and of course tweet continuously. The mics are there now.
So good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. This for the first time naona kama tunapiga mkutano pale tumeboeka sana. And I'm wondering is Malali this? Yes. Odika, yuko kwa hii room. We can't start like this. Watu wamelala, mshawala. Halala. Hatuwezi endelea na we can't have a conversation about human rights defenders when the human rights defenders are sleeping on the job. We wake them up. Ndio kidogo sawa. Wala kani. Ndio kazi yako kwanza tusimame hapa. Fanya kazi. Huwezi kuendelea na nani. Wala recruit more people as you can. More people come. Yes. Viva comrades, viva! Viva! Viva comrades, viva! Viva! More power! Community organizing, more power! What to our women, more power! More power! Shut down! Unity down! Down the shrinking civic space down! Kama unapenda hii nchi naomba usimame. Lakini napenda Kenya lakini nachukia tunapolitiki. You're not, as it is now, move back. Until now, ulikuwa ndani mkutano ni ambassador. Ulifunguliwa kama na nini, hakuna hata wimbo wa mapambano. So nilikuwa nasema maybe Ruto will come to do the close. But now I'm feeling at home. Viva my comrades, viva! Hatuibangi. I cannot sing wimbo wa mapambano na kama hujafurahi. You know, it's the songs that gives us hope that we are going to liberate this country. Si ndio? ikita kando yako ikita mayako Now, my name is about to introduce. But the first thing before I start our session today, which is going to be a discussion. It's not a presentation, it's a discussion. So it will be a discussion with you and some of our very able panelists. But before that, Father, what has been happening behind the scene is that they are very powerful, who are doing combination work. They want not for you to again, But there are people out there who like to hear and hear what you're doing. A simple tweet would help the next person to know what we're talking about and what the issues are. So my appeal to you, we will not bother you to create content. There are people in communication who are creating content for you, and they will post some things. And you just retweet. Is it too much to ask? To retweet? And when you retweet, the only thing you need to do is weka ile hashtag, the hashtag tumeambiwa ni hashtag CSBS3. Hiyo ni shida. So I want a commitment. As we continue in the session, I'm not giving you the license as to start checking your emails. I'll just give you the license to tweet. About this session. Please make sure you talk to 10 people, let 10 people or 100 people know that we're having a great conversation. And this morning conversation is very simple. It's about having a conversation that we're calling it intergenerational conversation. It's conversation about how we are organizing, how we are concerned about safety and protection when we're doing our work. It's also about a conversation about our well-being as we do this humanized work. So for me, I need to just introduce myself first before I invite my panel. I work for an organization called the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, majority of you Defenders Coalition. Hata saa hizi najua watu wengine tukiwatumia M-Pesa, saa hizi zile majina zinapokelezea zitakuwa funny sana. Kwa hivyo hata sisi kuna jina ya M-Pesa inaitangwa the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, lakini sana sana tunaitangwa Defenders Coalition. Our work is simple. We are concerned about the safety, security, and well-being of human rights defenders because we believe that a human rights defender who is strong, a human rights defender who is not in prison, a human rights defender who is safe, is going to change the life of the next person better than when they are behind. That is why we need to have this conversation. But having said that, let's also acknowledge that some of these conversations and mechanisms that are there, for example, the National Coalition, these are things that are recent. But I'm happy that yesterday we introduced at the conference, the convening with very, very inspiring conversation with James Orengo. James Orengo, as all you all know, he has seen it all. He's a lawyer who has given his life. But as a human rights defender, we know him as a human rights defender. We know him as someone who has inspired. But I can also tell you that he was not alone in some of these struggles that he had done. Part of the team that I have always admired and looked forward to me so that we can always exchange notes is one person who is in the room. The person who is actually in this room, he is a board member of an organization called Muslim for Human Rights. Majority of you know it as Mukuri. This is someone who has been at the forefront of any original conversation on pro-democracy activities when it was treasonable to think democracy to think human rights. But I know him at that point because I know he was in Mogaza. I know he was a founder from Sabina Party. I know that he was in the conversation around the constitution. But recently, he was the commissioner at the International Commission on Human Rights. Today, he is leading some of the most progressive public interest investigations, pushing the government to consider people first. So please join me in inviting Heref Khalifa. The other person who will be joining us, who is joining us here, as you know, every time we have conversations, sometimes so inasemekana mwache kupiga kelele. This is how. Now, number one, you start with the about organization of different property of India, but you know, they choose using the whole thing. You get today is a conference. John, it's not for human rights. Make sure that we our team. Is the net to create something. And the other people that we have equal rights. Only falls into the science. One woman human rights defenders to highlight the violations taking place at the back. This is why I want to invite a very strong woman human rights defender, her name, if you don't know, the convener of Usonaki Social Justice Center, and has been doing a lot of community organizing and very, very much concerned about the issues of women empowerment. And I'm so happy that this conversation she's going to lead us here is at a time when, just last week, the African Commission for Human and People's Rights adopted a protocol called the basically gave brief drive into the that recognizes the value of women not to be harmed but to be protected, and that we need to have legislations around that. So please join me in welcoming Millicent Muchiro.
Viva, comrades, viva! Viva! Sijui.
This called women power. Even if you try to ignore, you will still have to recognize. Yes. Karibu sana. And so part of the panelists, we have a young, not young, but a youthful human rights defender, someone who is quite passionate about key populations, particularly on the issues of health rights. Someone who believes that we cannot leave a section of our own community being harmed when we assume that everything is right, and says that all rights are equal rights. Please join me in welcoming the program assistant of the Kenya Human Rights Commission that deals with issues of LGBTQ rights. Karibu sana. His name is Adrian Civic. Karibu, Adrian. And you think it will apply. But today we'll hear whether we can have a mix of the old strategies and the new strategies. So, but at this point, I would like to give each one a chance just to tell us who they are, according to themselves, not according to me, and their preoccupation with regards to human rights protection. So I'll start by giving a chance to Sinajua Women Power is superpower. So we'll start with Millicent to introduce herself and tell us a little bit briefly about the work that they do.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be part of this panel this morning. As you've heard, my name is Millicent Olamuchilwa, convener Usonaki Social Justice Center. Now, the community we work with are right on the shores of Lake Sango. Yeah, and we have seen this particular natural resource degenerating over the years. On the other side, we have the international airport. So this community started loaning land to the airport in 1914 during the First World War. In 1942, they were again requested. And 2009, again, they had to give way. So we are speaking historical injustices within this community. Your land is taken up, you're not compensated. And they have tried organizing over this issue. They have been in court for so many years. We've had the grandfathers who started it off, have all died off. Some of the parents have died off. Now we have children and great-grandchildren in pursuing this matter. But we're going to delve a bit more into that. Given that I live along the lake, I have teenagers within the community who challenged me. And they accused us of being responsible for the degeneration of the lake. So I'm really happy about this cross-generational discussion today. We are friends of Lake Victoria. We call ourselves Osiepe Sango. I'm just holding the leadership position in trust for the young people. One of our youth is here. He spoke very well yesterday, Willis Otiende. And for them, the time for action is now. And they're realizing actually, in the past, the lake was preserved before the colonists came. Yeah, there is a way the indigenous people preserved the lake, but with the of colonialism, the change of the name of the lake, now we have Lake Victoria as a garbage dump. We have known companies discharging waste and effluent into the lake, and not much has been going on. So the young people have risen up and they want to be counted. As we go ahead, we will delve into more of that. But like we stated yesterday, the lake is actually a personality and it does have rights. And actually in the traditional society, it was referred to as mother because it gives so much. But is there a gift that can keep on giving if it is not cared for? Can you keep milking your dairy cow if you do not take care of it? Can your chicken continue laying eggs if you do not feed it, if you do not care for it? So Lake Sango has rights, and that's another thing that we are agitating for. We have got to take care of our natural resources, but we have to begin by reconnecting our people to these spaces. Why did our people lose interest and consider these resources as belonging to the government? Yet it is the community in the generations past that has taken care of this. And I'm really eager for this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Kabisa hao. Now you know me said better. Mheshimiwa Helen, Commissioner. I think it's one, but we could exchange. Actually.
My name is Elif Khalifa. Born and raised in Mombasa. I want to give a short history of Muri Muslims for Human Rights, how it came about. I think many of you, or some of you are aware. I think some of you are aware, but many of you don't. In the early 90s, when there was agitation for change of the constitution, that is Section 2A, to make a multi-party system. During that time, of course, Matiba, via Amaris and others, Orengo, Gordon Whitten, people were fighting to change the constitution. Before elections and after elections, there were clashes. When people died, it was the government instigated. So in 1997, before general election, there were clashes in South Coast, Mombasa. So there was influx or outflux of non-country people who were perceived as opposition. So this was national politics and also local politics. About 100,000 people immigrated from Likoni, Mombasa. So they also lost their votes. And it was worked very well for Moi. It was worked very well also for local leaders there. So we thought to stand up as Muslim community. We first approached Muslim imams, some came, we asked them, let us do something, because people are killed, and some people have been thrown out from their houses. So, very Islamic organization in the coast did not take up the heat. So we started, it was myself, my Professor Lamin Mazrui and William Dung, former Chief Justice. And we decided to form our own and to fight. And the name came Muslims for Human Rights. Quite sometimes people thought it was a religious group or something like that. But it wasn't. We just wanted to instill issues of human rights. Okay, be it corruption, political brutality, mismanagement, or anything that violates the rights. This is the history of Kurdistan. So, with that experience, we started in the streets by organizing demonstrations. And ever since, that's how Muhuri operates. And we are, I can say we are good on rapid response. Muhuri, I can say, is very courageous. We don't talk the law, and we don't fear. This is the face of an organization called Food to Human Rights Forum. I think I will stop there. And,
Thank you, Helen. Makofi kwa Helen. If you don't know Helen now, at least you've met Helen, but the other team had told you how what he has done and what he's going to plan. But I think we have this. At this time, please let me invite Nadia to tell us more about himself and what you're doing.
Right, thank you. So I'm the youngest in the panel. I hope to wakilisha the youth properly. Well, KHLC has been at the forefront of LGBTQI rights. I mean, from 2005 was the first time we held an LGBT play, and it was held at the Kenya National Theatre. After that, like a year later, LGBTI persons came together and they formed an organization. It was called GALC. So GALC is called, at that time, it was called the Gay and Lesbian Coalition of Kenya. So after working for a while, they realized that LGBTI persons, they have a lot of legal issues. And at the core of it, in section 162 to 155 of the Penal Code, that criminalizes same-sex conduct. And so in 2011, the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission legal act that was just registered in March, that following the ruling that we got. So in 2011, it was formed and it was inhabited in KHRC's office. So we grew together, we've been working together. That's in terms of history. In terms of Adrian, I am a young transgender activist. I have been working in this space for now 4 years. I am passionate about LGBT rights, and I believe that we cannot talk about human rights without talking about LGBTI rights. And so that's why I'm here, and that's what I'll be bringing on board to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Coffee. So now, the topic is about organizing. The topic is about safety and protection. There's a conversation that's going on that every time the human rights defender has to go to the street, you say Muhuri is about courage. But the first question is always, what happens if we are arrested? What happens when we are injured? Like, what kind of strategies or measures did you put in place? Was that a concern when you are fighting for the removal of Section 2A to have multipartyism? What we know is that there are no funds, so how are you organizing? At the same time, I know that Moi was not a new. So I'd like to hear, please, if you could tell us in details how you pushed so hard to the extent that a dictator gave in, and what protection measures were available. If not, what is this that drove you to continue doing what you did?
First and foremost, you must have a passion and you must believe what you are doing. These are the key issues that it can drive with that force. You must believe what you are doing, it's right, and you take to it. human rights is not an ordinary work. You know, it's not like working in a 2 million or in a bank. Human rights, when you're working, it carries some kind of risks. When you stand up and fight for corruption, you are interfering in somebody else's territory. And those guys are not happy, be it the president or all the way to MC. And that is our work. I want to give you some my personal experience. You know, I have turned 74 months ago. I'm heading to 75. And every time I want to put my gloves down, I say, now it's enough. But something propels me to always stand and fight. When I watched the clips right here in Kisumu, police officers, they go into the people's house and find the masks. 2 brothers were killed. This is brutality. Now, every time I look at these clips, if it happens to somebody in Kisumu, it can happen to us, or my kids, or somebody else's kids. So to me, I take these things with a view, because if anything happened, any violation happened to anybody, make sure it will come back to you one day. In the 90s, it was the fashion with Moi, full force against Kikuyus, because they were forefronts, they laws in forefronts. Okay. And when Kikuyus came to power, it was also fashion to go against laws because they are in opposition. So these people, they want to protect what they have. That Ruto and his Kenya ones are against demonstration. No, they are against demonstration against them. Because we have seen demonstration in Mombasa, LGBTQ, and a lot of thousands of people on the streets were literally saying, they didn't even touch. So demonstration is bad when you touch them. So you touch their interest. That's why they put the leg, they say, no, you can't do this. So it's about interest. But one thing I have to make it very clear, and this is experience I want to tell you, and you need to learn. We as human rights defenders, we have greater responsibility than ordinary people in the street. Because we always tell the government to maintain law and order, the police should not break the law. But when it comes to us, we should stand firm. Me, as Khalif Khalifa, no police officer, even with full uniform, if he stops or asks me any question, and that police officer does not have a service number, I refuse to answer any question. Why? Because this officer, just one example, he will ask for a bribe. How do I defend myself if I don't know him, I don't know his name, I don't know his number? So for police officer, without a number, that police officer is not police officer. You need to stand. Violations, I remember last year when we were coming from Wajir, in Kenya Kwanza, we flew from Wajir to Wilson Airport. And I was the first one to disembark. Sasa pale kuna polisi, kuna migration, he says, now, show your passport or ID. Let's see what the hell is going on. We're coming from Wajir. We're not coming from Somalia. Say, yes, I know. But everybody has to show his passport or an ID card. And I said, no. I'm not going to show you my ID card or anything else. Because if I flew from Mombasa to Nairobi or Nairobi to Kisumu, nobody is asking you for an ID. Why ask an ID? Because you are coming from Northeastern. And mind you, before you board that plane, you have almost 4 checkups before you reach to the plane. So this is a clear harassment. Harassment in a sense to show the Somali people that you are not fully Kenyans. It's okay when you come from other parts, but when you come from Northeastern, no, you are different. Okay. And we must show an example. This kind of violation, I say no. And make sure every time your right is violated, don't complain, stand up and fight for it. Okay. You know, when you go to Lamu, there are a lot of security checks. Just about a month ago, I was passing the Sabaki River, and I saw police officers wearing very weird. You can't tell them if they're military, GSU, you know, with ninja and glasses, sunglasses. And they asked me, they stopped me. And I said, why are you stopping? They stopped me. Said for security check. Then I asked him, what reason do you have suspecting me? Me, you are suspecting me of, you know, breaking on security issues. Say this is routine. I tell you, that's you. But me, I'm asking, I've got my rights. And then I refuse. But they let me go. You see, many people don't know that a police officer has a right to stop you and ask you. The police officer must have a reason to flag you down with your car, to search you, to look for anything. Must have a reason. You don't just stand over there. Wait. No, you can't do it. So you must stand and fight for that. He stops. Why you stop? What for? Do you have any reason to stop me? Stand up. Every time when you preach human rights, it means you must stand up and defend yourself. It is not an easy, but I tell you, when you, a police officer, when you stand before him and challenge him, most of the time these people will. And one important thing, what I have witnessed, when police officer or riot police officer, when he violates his own code of conduct, like beating people or coming inside your house, those police officers cease to be police officers. Now treat them as victims. That is the time you say, this one you cannot do. How on earth police officers here in Kisumu, with such a big population, go inside the house, from one house to the other, violate, some of them beating to death? You know? Piga duru kama unapanga, kama una nini, defend yourself. You can't be beaten to death because it's a police officer. He ceased to be a police officer if you violate your rights. Rights doesn't come easy. Nowhere in the world. Hakuna mkoloni aliondoka in a silver road with a splatter. People fought. Na damu imemwagika. So to get your rights, it means you have to stand up. You must stand up. It's the time you tell them, hii bana hapana huwezi kufanya kitu. Kwa hivyo, this is a greater responsibility you people have. And I always tell you, please, this is not a normal work. Like you have to mwoga sana, ura atafute kazi Makumi, not much. hii kwa hatari yake. Okay? Many people, I went through a lot of danger. Sometimes, one time I thought I was going to die. Okay? But the only thing I said, hey, kwani nani ataishi maisha? Sikukufa. Ikiwa si leo ni kesho, kama si kesho kesho kutu. Sikukufa. Uoga tueni. As long as you have that right, stay and fight for it. Hakuna kitu rahisi. Let me tell you, hakuna. Sisi wengine tumelala seli siku mingi. Na tukatandikwa. I'm telling you. Kuna time walisema they are going to throw me. We're going to preach Palinyani. They want to go to my house to search us and do you search warrant. They say we don't need. Then I tell them we don't search my house. Wakachukua barabarani saa 9 usiku wakanitandika. Nilikuja magari siku zenda safina remember. Wakanitandika. I stood on the ground. I said, I'm not. You can kill me. Yule mmoja sema tupeleke kwenye bridge to that is the time I thought these guys are going to kill. But the only thing that gave me courage, said if they had intention of killing me, no matter what I plead, they kill me. So if I have to die, let me die as an officer. Na kitu kimoja nataka kuambia kwenye experience, kunakuja watu wengi wana complain. But be very careful. Every complaint that you receive, make sure you hear the other side also. Manake mtu anaweza kuja akakwambia a true story, lakini what he's telling you is 50%. Many times, sometimes we jump into conclusion, a statement, without hearing the other side. You must hear from the other side. Then you'll get a better picture and also in a better way to resolve the problem. I never thought, even a single day, that if I'm in danger, I'm going to get help anyway. Because you may never know, ili risasi itaingia hapa, itaingia huku chini. And if these people intend to kill you, my friend, you can't. Huko seli mwende hapo kwenye toka Amerika, siko dalili. Lakini Pinto na nani kwa risasi kwa they didn't even care about it. So fear weka nyumbani. Kwamba asante.
Did you hear that? Someone say, I don't know where, because I don't want to be quoted that time. I want to say it, but I would rather die on my feet than die on my knees. That's what I'm being told. That either way, stand up and fight. Asante sana Helen. Now, there is always a conversation around non-discrimination, thinking and using human rights, the rights that we want to protect and others that don't. I would like to invite Adrian to tell us more what it is like to stand up for minority rights, rights that are not considered as human rights. And Adrian has also mentioned something that as a trans person, and what I'm thinking in my mind that when you say, when you have been interacting with all these human rights defenders, they didn't care. They just saw Adrian and a human rights defender. But the moment you have mentioned, I'm a trans person, I saw everybody almost stand up trying to see this. Who is that trans person? Adrian, tell us what it is to be a human rights defender, working with the people that sometimes ignore you, despite the fact that you're also defending rights like everybody else.
Thank you. So I'll stand so that they can see me, because I am cognizant of the fact that I am short. See me, now you can go and say you've seen a trans person, yeah? So to answer the question, I'll have to give a bit of context so that people can understand what we're talking about here. And then after, I might, if time allows, simply explain what it is to be trans. So I've already said that there's the criminalization of same-sex conduct based on the penal code, that is section 152 to 155. And because of this, we are very afraid of talking about these conversations. We think they are taboo. And because we do not talk about them, we do not learn more about them. Because we don't learn more about them, we're ignorant. And this ignorance carries with us even as HRPs. Sinikweli. Sinikweli. And I mean, I have been in so many spaces like this, and every day I have to educate. But I'll only give you a sample. If you don't go back and read some more, you're back at the same place, right? Kama unanipiga picha, action nimesmile, eh? So, because of the current context, we already saw what the Supreme Court made a decision on the freedom of association, and we were able to register the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. And this sparked a conversation, and it was a great win for us. It was a legal win. But we haven't even had time to celebrate or be happy about it because the win was hijacked by our opposition. And people started screaming from the top of their lungs how, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And in the midst of all that, there's been a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of propaganda that is being, peddled to the public. For instance, the issue of one, we are paying people to be LGBTI, that we are recruiting people, that we are recruiting children, and that we are lobbying for gay marriage. All this is false. In fact, there's no place you'll find a form people are being registered to be LGBTI or to be referred to as that. And there's no place you'll find people who have registered now being paid to be LGBTI. Lastly, no one is indoctrinating children. All organizations that are dealing with LGBT rights, one thing is standard. We're talking about adults. We're talking about people who have attained the age of 18, people who can make decisions legally. So what happens when we have a situation where we have a public that is not informed, that is afraid of having these conversations, and an opposition that keeps peddling lies? We experience or we see fear. We see fear in the public, right? Right? People are afraid. They're afraid we're coming for your children. They're afraid we're coming for family values. They're afraid, they're just afraid. And this fear is not one-sided. Even LGBTI persons are afraid because when the society is scared, they see him as a threat. And that means there's an escalation in violence. There's an escalation in dignified treatment. There's an escalation in people being rendered homeless, families rejecting their children. And this is a reality that not many of us are open to speak and be honest about. On the issue of marriage, I don't think I mentioned, no one is lobbying for gay marriage. In fact, when you speak to a lot of LGBTI persons, the one thing that they'll say is that we just want to live. We just want to live like everyone else and not be questioned and not be harassed, not be bullied. We just want just, fair, and dignified treatment that is equal and non-discriminatory, just as the Constitution envisioned. So not special rights for LGBTI persons, just human rights. And so how is it for a human rights defender such as myself? It's quite difficult because in all the spaces I go, I have to educate, I have to inform, I have to, first of all, get comfortable with people so that they can ask me questions. so that they can open up and say, hey, I don't like this, I don't find this to be right. You know, what are you guys trying to do and stuff like that. So it's quite difficult because you see, when you're fighting for tumeenda kwa barabara, and it's because there's a high cost of living. Everyone is feeling it, right? Everyone knows. Are you going to explain to anyone what the high cost of living is? Kila mtu anajua no ngapi ngapi. We all know. But it's quite different when you have to start by making someone understand why this is important, understand why it is impactful, and understand why you're doing it. Then now we can join together in the fight. So it's quite difficult, but it's a journey. And being in a civil rights space is very intentional because we need to stop separating human rights. I mean, when someone is attacked, I'm not asking whether they're a man, a woman. I'm not asking whether they are born here or not. It's quite simple. It's a human being. They're deserving of human rights, and so we'll fight for them. And so I feel it's about time we start, getting comfortable with these conversations and being open about them. Onto the question of what is trans. Trans is me. So a transgender person is a person whose gender identity is quite different from their sex. I mean, this is a very complex, it's quite a complex topic to explain in just a few minutes. And so I will ask you to read a bit of material on gender identity so that you can also understand that you yourself have a gender identity and it is inherent, it does not change. And there are several studies and researches that have been done on this. I'm also comfortable to share material if anyone will need it. And also, if you want to see me on the side and ask me questions, just as he said, I'm not scared. Ask me anything. Ask me the way you want to ask it. Ask it as crude as you will be, because you'll not get a space where someone will tell you, ask me. Ask me so I can tell you, so I can educate you and we can move together. That's all. Thank you.
We'll be giving an opportunity for people to interact and ask a question. And before then, I'd like to know by a show of hands, how many tweets on this side, how many tweets have you so far done, or how many times have you retweeted? If you have retweeted or tweeted 10 times or below, let me see your hand, including 0. 10 times up and below, including 0. So you see, that is why we are not trending. If you have tweeted more than 10 times, let me see your hand. Only one person. Jameni, if you want to let the people out there know what you're doing, and I'm sure I'll be asking Adrian to tell us about the power of technology and social media and all that. I think you must use the social media even for this event. Remember, the hashtag is CSPS3. Having said that, I'd like to know about being a woman human rights defender. You are defending rights in the community, rights of women. Some of them are being abused and beaten up. Children that are being separated with their families are beaten up or have no access to education. But sometimes, as a woman human rights defender, you face certain challenges that are beyond what any other human rights defender faces. I'd like to hear more about your experience as a woman human rights defender in the community. How do they perceive you? What are some of the challenges that you experience? But at the same time, what inspires you?
Okay, the precedence has been set. Let me also stand so that those at the back can see me and hear me. Now, in terms of challenges that a woman rights defender experiences, let me start from way back when I was still a girl in college. And there were some experiences we were going through as a family. We were living in rented premises in the city of Nairobi. And the landlord decided, because rent was late, irrespective of the fact that he had spoken to my father, he decided to switch off power and water Yet they had agreed that the rent was going to be paid a week later. And at the time, I had been going around the country with the Catholic Peace and Justice Commission and the NCCK Commission also, with the likes of Professor Kibwana and Smokin Wanjala, who is now in the Supreme Court. So I had just learned about rights that we have. So I come back from college at the weekend and I find there's no lights, and everyone amejikunja. And let me tell you, it's traumatizing for children to see the parents powerless. So I asked what was going on. I was told because I could see lights in the neighboring flats. And I decided I'm not going back to college on Monday morning. Let's get this sorted. We were very familiar with the landlord. He would always greet us. So I walk into his office because it was within the premises. And he asks me, "Who are you?" And I think something just snapped in me. So I told him what you're going to do. You're going to restore the power, you're going to restore the water, and you're going to respect other people because you have a gentleman's agreement. So long story short, we went to Kenya Power with my brother. We got a letter from there. That's when I learned that a landlord cannot just switch off your power. He's not even allowed to touch whatever belongs to the power company. And the water company, the same thing. So by the time we were heading back home, my dad was telling me, "You have created a merry mess here," because telephone calls had been made to him and he was fined quite a princely amount of money. Then he restored power not just for us, but for everyone else. So I actually saw that it paid off. And the other tenants came and said, "Why don't we form an association and would like you to chair it?" My mom threw her hands in the air and she said, "My daughter, you will be killed, you can't." And that was my short-lived defending. So as we went along, I just learned to speak out, not just for myself. In matatus, when fares would be increased, I would speak up. And eventually they would say, "Oh, Shoneja Luo," but I would pay the correct fare while everybody else would pay a higher amount. So I learned that speaking up pays. But right from the family setup, then I saw that my brothers were not quite happy about it. So they would always tell me, "Watch your back, you're going too fast, you're being pushed down." It's the same thing, right? Into marriage within the community, and I'm sure the women here, you've been told you want to wear the trousers, you think you're, very clever, you're moving too fast, you're embarrassing us out there. Why must you always be the one to talk? Why do you want to take the name away from your husband? Why do you want to be better known? But those are things we have to rise above and keep going. And within the community itself, you find that those who are benefiting from injustices then begin sending information to you. And like in this case of the historical injustices we are talking about, I was told the lake is nearby and sinking is not very difficult. But like Senior here has stated, you try and retreat, but there's just something in you that keeps pushing you. When you say, "Today I'm going to keep quiet, I will not talk," so you shriek for like an hour. Let me tell you, when you get up, you'll explode. And we were sharing this with Odinga yesterday also, because it is inherent within you. Yeah. So what you do is you keep moving and respecting, and eventually you earn begrudging respect, I'll say, from those who have been fighting you, because what you're doing eventually benefits them as well. So I'll encourage women, let's keep going. We keep our ears closed. We observe quite a bit, and like he said, When you're articulating issues, always look at both sides. Get as much information as you can so that when you step out, even the perpetrators will have no option but to respect your stand. They will threaten you, yes, but for me, I believe there is the one that gives life. And even if you harm my body, you cannot take away my soul. So I believe in my God and I keep going. And I believe so long as what I am doing is right. Believe me, heaven and earth backs me. Even when I'm facing difficulties right from the family level. For instance, in this issue of the area, Usoma, Nawa, and Kirebe, that I live, the community I live within, yeah. Apparently, they're a warrior community, but the injustices they have gone through, because let me tell you, when the perpetrator sets their sights on you, it becomes difficult. Like I gave my experience as a young girl, when I saw the humiliation my parents went through, then I began cowering, and the world seems very big and cold. So when we come back to this community, I look at it from that perspective. Because those that went out to demonstrate, they were beaten, they were arrested, and the perpetrator followed through. Even as recently as this was in 2020, when now the community were totally fed up and they wanted to go out to the streets again. Now, KAA began coming within the community with sniffer dogs, and they were making arbitrary arrests. The airport fenced beyond their property into people's land. And then if you cultivate along the airport fence, you'd be arrested. And you ask, under which law? Utasemea mbele. So the community has completely shrunk, yeah. They've had a case in court, and even within the court system itself. I mean, they started this case, I think it was in 2007 or 2009, yeah, when you could still sue KAA directly. And then with the advent of the new constitution, National Land Commission took over. So they'll tell you, oh, we need time to familiarize ourselves with it. So it's been delay after delay after delay. Still no salary when you're acquiring land from them. But what we had in 2009 is lawyers descended in the village. And before long, the community was dispossessed of their land. The money they got was too little. Yeah. So you find the community becomes squatters. They're still chasing land that was taken in 1942. Court says we can talk about 300 acres, 500 acres, we will not touch on. Yet they have documents right from the colonial government that indicated how this land was taken up by the government. And if you look at community members themselves, the perpetrator decided, or the duty bearer decided to split them. So they would pick those that were at the forefront, fly them to Nairobi, take them to big hotels, give them some money, explain to them that, you know, this is government, you cannot fight government, development has to come. It does not help that our leader also says development must come. So community have basically been left to their own devices. Senior, they have still not gotten justice, even as we speak at this point. I stepped in to assist them from 2020 because during COVID then we were all within the community and we were able to learn about what has been going on. So we were discussing yesterday concerning the right to protest. And my question is this right absolute? Because right now we have instances of companies that now bought land that had been alienated by government for development. And I believe there's a section of the law that says if government does not utilize the land for the purposes it was intended for, it needs to go back to the community. This land has gone to third parties. And again, when you begin asking questions, it is so serious that there are some people who have actually lost their lives within that community. So we have a community that is totally scared, the elderly members of the community. When you mention government, they begin trembling. And the younger members of the community, because of the trauma of seeing what the elderly ones have gone through, you want to leave the community, or if you're there, you're totally apathetic. In fact, it is a community that is just about 8 kilometers from town, but you'll find that the young people do not even take IDs. Yeah. So I believe now that we're here, we can look at solidarity. We can learn from senior here, from Mr. Kiama also. How did they manage to keep going? Because organizing this community has been a bit difficult. They're very suspicious, but finally, at least they were able to embrace us. And we have come up with a CBO. So we want to continue organizing and to see justice served to this particular community. Now, in terms of Lake Sango, I said we're working around plastic pollution. Adrian has said it is important to educate people. Like Patrick also stated yesterday, it is behavior change that is going to help us. Once we realize that this plastic, when we throw it away, there is no away. Where does it wind up? In our water bodies. So it is compounding the problem of pollution that is already there. My community members are crying, and we can see it. We are actually importing fish from China, aren't we? Yet we are sitting on a large resource. So we need to ask ourselves questions, and as information comes through on plastic pollution, kindly help us by making a choice to reduce the amount of plastic that you're taking up. If it is totally not necessary, then let us not purchase it. Because plastic is the only supply-led product known in economic circles. They produce it whether you need it or plastic is in our major organs. Plastic has been found in places where no man has been. So I'll urge us all in seeking to protect the rights of our waterways, please let us begin to refuse plastic that is not necessary. I believe my time is up. Thank you.
The danger of giving a passionate human rights defender the microphone is that you can never take away the microphone from them because it's a right. But I have had some key words coming out: solidarity, and with that we are a human resource here. We are all resourceful here, and I was thinking that the network of social justice centers, I think your job is already covered in here to support Millicent and the team, so that some of the issues that Millicent is raising, we need to work collectively. Now, time is not on our side, but I would like, I said it's a conversation. I'd like to invite one or two hands, anyone with a burning issue to share or to comment, so that we also give everyone a chance. But I'll start with the people that I've been informed are tweeting. So I'll take your hand, and I'll take your hand first, then we take a second round. So we start with you. So this is honoring you for tweeting. If you are not tweeting, then we'll take it back.
Thank you so much. I want to, it's not the question, but just to addition to my brother, Adrian, if I got the name, yeah. For me, I have a Christian background, and initially, when we were fitting into these spaces, we could not actually understand the issue about LGBTQ, but I asked for a training on which we were trained with an organization. My concern is that in the whole space, sexuality is about therapy. And when there is a gap, for example, when somebody happens to get a spinal injury, or even the cerebral palsy, then they have to go through a rehabilitation process. My worry is that most of the time it's about my sexual orientation, and not about the community at large. How I would wish that some of the components that for me are very key is about rehabilitation when it comes to those who happen to get disability in their life. For example, I said I'm of Christian background. I believe in marriage between male and female. So what happens when your husband, who has been sexually active, involves in a road accident and happens to get a spinal injury? Then your push as an organization should be about the rehabilitation measures. In that, when it comes to rehabilitation, there are issues of sex toys, and there is even the physical aspect, like even the bed modification. You'll not be able to use the same bed that you've been using. So that is very key to me. The other aspect you mentioned is about creating awareness. Like, for example, the ones who happen to have both sexes at birth. You will help me in the terminology. I know about the hermaphrodite, but you get me the right term. This is something that you're supposed to give a visibility, because at birth, you find that a surgery has been done. When you grow up, then you find that initially now the hormones that give its visibility are for male, and the surgery that was done portrays at a female. So fitting in the society, you will be labeled as a lesbian, you will be labeled in all forms of manners. So these things are the ones that, to me, with disability are asexual. Asexual means that you don't portray feelings when it comes to the issues of sexuality. This is also something that they should give an impact and awareness at the community level, because we demystify this fact by having families, getting married, having children, and having families. So I rest my case there, and thank you.
Very articulate. You see, that is why we are giving people who are twitching, because they are giving us very good points.
Thanks for this chance. To start on, please, if you are tweeting, make sure that you follow the others who have tweeted before you, and if you are repeating also, you do the same. I have two questions. Many of us, when we had protest in March and July, we saw kids carrying stones. And when they are asked, they say, tunaenda maandamano. And if you look at the age of that kid who is saying tunaenda maandamano, the kid is less than 10 years. Currently, I feel we have a gap in the generational age. We are not handing over to the coming generation. They have so many challenges that they need to handle. But as Adrian said, the flow of information is not clear. And the information they need to have, they are basing their knowledge on what they find online, on the internet. And unfortunately, the information online these days is distorted. So we need to ask ourselves, as the human rights actors, what are we doing in passing down the information? In our discussion yesterday around data privacy, we say that we have this information, but we have it in concrete form. We have not been able to break that information into a language someone can understand. If that kid was able to understand that carrying a stone, you're going for maandamano, how can we make the same kid understand that when you see a human rights violation somewhere, you need to raise your voice? Another point, many of us, we believe that the space we operate in, it is budgeted, but we haven't stretched ourselves to go beyond the limits that we have. Unfortunately, we are chasing projects and finances to keep going. But how many things don't need finances? They don't need budgets. They don't need show-offs. They just need you showing there and making sure that you stand out in pointing out those human rights infringements. It is time that we go beyond. We can't say we are organizing, we have safety, we have all that, without overstepping on others. Because you can't be defending what you really don't believe in. If you ever believe in something, regardless of the sphere that there is, and when we are here, we have said we can coordinate, we can collaborate, we can do all that. And that can't happen if we haven't unified our voices and going beyond what we have on paper. Because if we follow everything we have on paper, there is much we can't accomplish. So to the panelists, my question is, how best can we go beyond what we have? There are so many things we have listing in paper, but we never accomplish beyond that.
Thank you. You did tell us your name.
My name is Jacob Commander, Consumer Grassroots, Kajiado County.
Asante sana. Now let me see who else qualifies. I see 3 hands. We'll settle for 2 because of time. This is my discretion. I will start with Christine, and then I'll give one of us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Katikanda from Kitui County Initiative for Inclusive Empowerment. A long-time human rights defenders stand for the rights of others. And in most cases, you realize that human rights defenders have issues which maybe they're not able to express themselves, maybe to people who can also come for them. A scenario where we say preaching maybe wine and taking water. So I'm thinking loud and throwing a challenge to all of us. As we are there for others, as we mobilize, as we recruit, as we bring, as we stand for the rights of others, then who is this organizing for us? Maybe for therapy. I think I am an example of standing for others, but when it comes a point where you need a shoulder to lean on, you don't know where to go. I think it is an issue I think we should also maybe think about, or maybe if there is this person who is there for all of us, providing that shoulder for us to lean on.
Defense the defenders, we'll talk about that.
Okay, asante sana. My name is Andrew Young Okola from the Social Justice Centers and also the Steering on Protection. My question is, in organizing, we have all been doing good work in our organizing, different organizing, be it the climate, the gender, the pub, and everything else. But is there a way that we can consider each other as allies rather than organizing in silos? We just come together and maybe share in the ideology, we sharpen contradictions and move as one. For instance, when it comes to the LGBTQIA, the alphabet community, we have
our reservations, and it's something that is normal, maybe from our upbringing and everything else. But is there a way that we can consider each other allies rather than competition? Or even, do you feel at some point that you need to protect yourself from your fellow human rights defenders? So how do we change that? That one. Then two, in terms of safety and also welfare, we realize that not at all times we have to maybe bank on defenders with the good work they're doing in defending human rights defenders pale kwa ground. So is there a way that we form allies amongst ourselves whereby if you are threatened pale kwa ground, si ati unapigia kina Ubino simu wako Nairobi na uko Kisumu, yetu nawacha comrade mwenzako kando yako? Is it an issue of trust or anything? So how do we solve that moving forward? And also on the welfare, we've been attending and going to many forums, yes, using a lot of money and everything else. But can we now find basis whereby we invest in our own selves? Let's talk about our businesses. Let's talk about our whatever it is that we do. Because when I was getting into this space, I was told that this kuwa human rights defender sio kazi. So what happens kwa wale ambao ndio bado wanaamini sio kazi, na wale wenye pia walichukulia kama kazi? Asante sana.
Allow Helen. There's an announcement here. Helen is supposed to leave in the next 10 minutes, so I'll first give you the chance to respond before you leave. I think your time is coming up.
I think you raised the issue of young kid getting stoned. This is the way how police wants to portray that those who going for demonstration, they are violent. But let me get strong from zero damage. Most of the time, when there is a commotion, it is the police who started. Because even before people going to that rally, they start stopping and throwing chairs. Once you do that, you invite trouble. Okay, so we must be very clear. However, even the most advanced country in the world, we saw France the other day. There was so much destruction, so many cities, because police killed a 17-year-old boy. Police never shot one live ammunition to kill, not even one. This all the destruction. So, you know, the value of life, those countries and then our country here is totally different. To them, to kill the commissioner of police says, kwani tumewapa bunduki ya kufanya nini? By the way, we have a case in court. The Muhuri, HRC, and myself for the killings in 2017 in Nairobi when he was in charge of the police. 33 people were killed within 48 hours. There was no inquiry, there was no report, the boy just left, nothing. And then instead, the law gets his cause, they promoted him. They promoted him. The highest police post. Except how our law works. We need to step forward. We tell them, no, you can't do this. We saw them. We saw them. Yet you see, ilikuwa wafanye replying affidavit. Kile wangu nani Google Company. Nasema jamaa kujibu. Them, not even I pour. And they want you to follow the law. If you don't, they arrest you. Like they break the law themselves. So we must be very cognizant about these rights. It means we have to step forward and fight. Everything, fight. It's not because it is written in the law. Okay? We have been subjected, any Muslim with 3 Muslim names, for years. They'll ask you for your grandmother's certificate ID or grandfather, but other Kenyans they don't. Until we went to court, we challenged. Okay. So everything you have to fight, even though it's your right, but you have to fight. Which is wrong. I don't know, may I miss something that
yeah, it's totally. I would like you to mention or explain to us how we need to go with the community, including the young children, so that they first of all not just about having a stone, but understanding what the film is.
Well, I don't know when you say children, are they below 18 years? Because let me tell you, I think it's against the law, it's very dangerous. Taking kids where they will be, even if the police doesn't throw tear gas, it could be a commotion, they could be trampled upon and will get injured. So try to avoid the young kids from participating in any demonstration. But if I was young, knowing the police mentality, my friends, zangu nitatia mawe. There's something very important that the human rights organizations, you must stay here. Make sure if anything happens to anyone of us, not here in Kisumu, be it in Nairobi, be in Mombasa, anywhere, that is your business to stand up and defend it. There must be sanity, because not all of us are experts. There are human rights. People give them a laptop, stand in the office, they'll stand it. Some of us go to the street. Okay? Some of us, somebody is arrested, we go to the police station. And we should not pretend that everybody has that courage to do that. Still, they can do a lot of work according to their skills. Hata sisi Mombasa, mara nyingine tukipeleka statement, imekuja Patrick, because he writes very well. That's the way how to do it. Find somebody with certain skills, then go to him or her, you get help. Don't pretend that you know everything. In 2013, 2003, when they announced the position of commissioners, Commission Human Rights, so there are 9 positions, there were about 803 applicants. Now, I want to know my PhD. Sio moja mbili, my PhD. Kila moja ameapply. Work. So this is very, very important.